waking up in a bath of ice. I'm a victim of an organ heist. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you already stole my heart. Yeah, you ripped it and tore it apart. You know it is true, you know.
Welcome to Cutthroat Queens podcast, where everyone perfumes themselves with stink bug spray. We are here to take an open and honest look at all things indie horror. My name is Brett Mitchell-Kent, and I'm joined by the wrinkled newspaper in the men's porta potty, Chelsea Pumpkins, and the muskrat living in her uterus, Elton Skelter.
It's a me.
Hey!
I'm here. I've decided to join you on
Missed you.
on recording for one episode.
And it only took a lot of bullying to get him here.
It took
Yeah.
so much.
Literally, these guys are so passive aggressive. It's horrible.
We just read a book that took place in the early aughts.
I don't,
Mess and messenger abounds.
I don't know why, but I didn't like feel that, I guess, when I was reading. I mean, obviously it was because the MSN Messenger, like all of that portion was, but I think because it was also kind of current.
Oh, I totally felt... Okay, first of all, we're talking about Crybaby Bridge,
Yes.
which is C.B. Jones's upcoming novella. It's currently open for pre-order. You can find the pre-order link on his Twitter, which is at WriterSJones, and we will retweet and link and all that. But anyway, since we didn't introduce the book, that's what we're talking about.
So, guys,
When does it come out?
pretty sure it'll come out on the day that this goes live. It's the
Oh,
2nd,
shit, real
right?
soon.
Yeah, December 2nd,
Yeah.
Saturday.
Go CB!
So yeah,
I
go
thought
CB.
it-
We love CB. CB has been on the podcast before for the very first full-length episode, the 90s anthology episode, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, I did feel like I felt ingrained in the 2003 timeframe. And I noticed it because the last thing I read from him was his 90s story. And I was like, oh, it's really cool that he like got to like kind of
Move on.
ease into the next decade with a completely different story. But I don't know, it did stick out to me.
It was neat. So I actually think that it's kind of fun that, this is one of the last episodes, because I think that his book Rules of the Road was one that I mentioned in the first episode, wasn't it? Of one of the things that I loved that I read last year.
I think it might have been.
And then
I would have to consult the show notes. By the way, everybody, there's show notes in case you didn't know. Those are
Chelsea works
always
really
up
hard to get them done late, so you should read them.
No one
week
reads
after.
Somebody
them.
check our show notes and let me know, but that might have been. And then I also did include him in the self-published article that I did for the lineup. So that his book, not this one, but his Rules of the Road book was included in that. So
Basically, we're super fans. And he's in Howls from the Wreckage, but I don't think we spent much time talking about his story on that episode.
It was very good. It was very, very good. And we are kind of on a self-publishing binge at the moment. So we're really like looking into what we can read self-publishing wise. And CB is a favorite of ours from the self-publishing world.
correct. And that is actually what this episode is about. We were able to sit down with two pretty successful self-published authors, Noelle W and
You can't say it like that. Do it again.
Ihli Silva.
Yes,
She-
she can. You can. Yes, you can. They're friends.
Ihli. You sounded like you were trying to do Jamaican. It sounded
Because
very
I've been
sexy.
saying it wrong this entire time. She told me when we met, talked, she's like, yeah, it's actually not Ihli, which was what I've been saying the whole time.
Which
Yeah.
you would know, Ellen, if you listen to the podcast.
Well, I haven't done it yet because I haven't got time. I've been writing a book. Remember writing, Chelsea?
No.
It
Can you
happens
tell me
when
what
sit
that's like?
in front of a computer.
She'll do it eventually, okay?
How
So
I
is
can
your
either
book
read
coming,
or write.
Chelsea,
Pick
by the way?
one.
you could do both. Some of us do both.
Yeah.
But sorry, circling back, we all three read Crybaby Bridge by C.B. Jones, and we want to discuss it with or for you. I mean, you can talk back to us if you'd like, but we're probably not going to respond in this format. If you want to talk about it on our Twitter or something, we'll reply. Let's just cut that part.
Twit talk.
What's
It
that?
didn't land.
It didn't land. It wasn't great.
Well, yeah, you can try talking to us, but we're not going to talk to you.
Brett, what did you think of the book?
Ooh, we're starting with me. Okay. So I think that if I was giving it a star rating, I would give it 5 out of 5 stars. I think that for what was presented to us, it was done very well. I liked the characters. The characters were very well done. And they were, I think, well realized for the way that it was presented. You know, it was very easy to know them, and what they did and how they reacted was very believable. I've never read a book that had, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but the killer type in this book was a new one for me. I've never seen this in a book.
Sexy baby.
Sexy baby.
Sexy baby. Yeah.
So that was a neat one, and it was also kind of grotesque. But I think that I think that when I say it, it's going to sound like a criticism, but I don't know that is a criticism in my eyes, is that I think that using the format that he did use, which was more like an interview style, I think it made it shorter than it could have been. And I would have liked to be able to spend more time in this story because I was very into it. So I think if he had gone with a traditional format, we could have spent more time in the world and been a little bit more involved.
Bear in mind that Brett is a whore for a slasher, so he wants to spend all of his time in slasher stories. That none of them are long enough for him.
I do. Also, this is the same thing that I have as a criticism for with Elton's books too, is that I've been bitching at him to can expand it for me so I can read what he just told me happened.
Everyone is just writing for Brett and his proclivities. So.
In an ideal world, yeah. So that it sounds like a criticism, but I'm not criticizing. It's just that I really would have liked to be in there a lot longer. Now, what did you think, Chelsea, for calling me out?
I will disagree with you respectfully. I loved the format, but I think it kept the pacing really quick, which was a benefit to this story. And I thought CB did a really good job of balancing all of like the major slasher plot points without spending too much time. Like, I don't think it was like, no part of it was overwritten or boring or overstayed its welcome, in my opinion. But you probably read a lot more slashers than me, though, so grain of salt. It had like a really engaging kind of, what's the word, like, I don't know, beginning. Like
that was the word that you couldn't grab.
No, I was looking for the different word, and I compromised. I settled. I thought the introduction was cool. It introduced the format really well. I was like sucked in instantly, wanting to know about this mystery. The framing of the story is our narrator is a writer and has a bit of like writer's block, for lack of a better frame. And he knows his wife underwent some sort of accident as a teenager, but she never talks about it. And she finally says, "Hey, I have an idea for your book. Go write about my accident, but I'm not going to tell you the story. Go learn about it from people in my town." So he like goes back and he interviews all these people who were alive at the time, and he mixes in like MSN Messenger chat transcripts with like brochures and newspapers and like coroner's reports, and then also just like interviewing, chatting and stuff. So I don't know, that worked really well for me. I love like a epistolary or like mixed media type of story.
Yes, I agree with that portion. I do love that format of a book, but yeah, I would rather have read the entire story as it was, and then also this. So. I
thought once, like every so often too, he would put in these little like kind of humorous interludes that they like made me laugh out loud. Like when they were like, "Oh yeah, that girl in high school was such a bitch." Like,
oh yeah.
He's like, "Of course he said that."
Yeah, I loved how interactive it was. It was like the interview. They were all obviously conducted separately, but then they kind of referenced each other within it to keep the flow of the story. It was really clever. Yeah,
and like Brett hates when I say this, but I could picture it as a movie. Like it reminded me a lot of anybody who watched like the adaptation of Daisy Jones and the Six, or just any sort of like almost like a VH1 mockumentary. Like
I kind of had like early Supernatural vibes from it, like season 1 Supernatural. It was kind of it kind of gave me that sort of that feel. that kind of vibe, 'cause it was like the right kind of time, and those kind of urban legends that it's dealing with were very sort of prominent in sort of early Supernatural before they ran out of ideas and kept killing everyone.
I do think that he did a very good job at being immersive with it, which for how short it was, he really did, because I didn't even realize how much I felt immersed in it until I was like, I live in kind of a small town. It's not like tiny, but small enough. It's rural. And I was driving downtown, and then I'm like, oh, because I was thinking about the cruising that they talk about, which is actually something that happens downtown in my town. It was neat.
Oh, still?
That, yeah, teenagers don't do it, though old people do.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they cruise, and it's obnoxious. It slows everything down. But I thought about it again, and I'm like, wow, it did. He really did do a good job of bringing us into that portion. I could picture it, all of it, where they went. One question I have for both of you is, I had a concern when I started, because interview format, and we're interviewing implied survivors, right? So one of the questions is going to be, is there going to be enough at stake if we know who survives? And I actually was very pleasantly surpsurprised, because in my opinion, I'm answering my own question. Sorry. That I feel though I was worried
about log off.
because while we know that there's certain people that did survive, we don't know who that we're not interviewing died. So there were still characters that we had to worry for, but also he snuck this little mystery in, and I wonder if it was even intentional. Chelsea pinpointed it, but it was probably the most intriguing part of the whole thing for me, was which one of these people, if any, are his wife, because they never name her. I actually went back to the beginning when I was reading it to be like, wait, which these people is his wife? And it was a huge mystery. You didn't find out until the end.
And I guess
that was cool.
Wrong. I was just guessing wrong the whole way through, because I just had sort of an image in my head of sort of the person he was talking about in the opening when he wrote the introduction or the preface. And I guess wrong. And it's a testament to sort of the writing style, the way the story was built, and how he gave you just enough to keep it moving in short, snappy segments without giving too much away to how it would end, but also to keep you invested in it the whole way through. It was really cleverly done.
Yeah, and he does a good job of like inserting new characters at different beats, but like not in a confusing or overwhelming way. So I kept being like, oh well, maybe this character is his wife, and then you'd meet a new person. I'm like, oh, that could be his wife, and then another person, it's like another person might die, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess she's off the list now, like things like that. So that was a really fun mystery. And Brett, I love that you brought up the like immersive small town feel, because that was something that came through both like in the meta story, but also in Phoebe's actual acknowledgments, that it was like a bit of an homage to small town living. And especially in horror, like small towns catch a lot of flack, either for being like too insular or like maybe bigoted, or just having this like, I don't know, if it's rural, maybe they like make them a little bit too hickish and like quote unquote stupid or whatever. But he like made this place sound like still a great place while also putting a tragedy there. And I don't know, I thought he did a really good job. It was cool.
And it had inclusive beats in it as well. There was some queer representation implied, and also the sexy baby was it was hot. So I love a sexy baby with a big blade. What can I say?
Oh my god.
Something else that I loved was the fact that he was purposefully inconsistent in his interviews, where the one person would call them Kylie and Briley, and then the other person would be like, yeah, they were actually like giving them separate names. What were their actual names? It doesn't matter, because they're not key to the story, and who honestly remembers everybody that you encounter in high school.
And that was the authenticity as well of them having interview statements one after the other to keep it in the timeline, but seeing things very differently. How Sky was seeing her relationship with Stephen and how Stephen was seeing his relationship with Nick were very, very different, but you could see how they'd be confusing at the time. And it was
Yeah.
really, it was cleverly painted.
I thought so too. And I think like the authenticity of kind of like the malleability of memory. And it was a long time ago. So like you said, like, why would you remember these randos while you were cruising? Also fits super well with the urban legend aspect of it. So like, and he's like, yeah, you know, something so bad happens and so much time goes by, like everybody has inserted their own like rumors and details and like legendary stuff into it. So that was well done too.
It was
a really great
it kind of had like a YA into adult feel because it was kind of represented from both age groups, which was really, really cleverly done. And urban legends are a huge part of anyone's like horror like diet growing up. And it was really nice to see that kind of that feeling that I had when I was a young teen, getting into horror and reading about these urban legends and stuff, to have that represented but seen through the eyes of somebody looking back on it. So it embraced the audience in multiple levels.
And you don't always get like the origin of an urban legend. Like so many times, like when you encounter one as a kid, like really it's already been passed down, but now you're going back to like the scene of the crime. And
early 2000s was like a huge resurgence for urban legends in horror anyway. We had the film Urban Legend. I Know What You Did Last Summer was very urban legendy. They all kind of like swallowed up this whole, I mean, even things down to like disturbing behavior. And you know, there were lots of sort of recalls back to it in the early 2000s, which painted it in this perfect setting to kind of really bring you back to the history of the horror movies that we grew up on. So
I think there was like this one part when I was reading it where one of the characters is like, yeah, you always like search for meaning in something like this. And I like literally like my heart dropped. I was like, no, because it just like, I had this moment where I was like, it is perfect the way it is. Like he doesn't need to insert like a message at this point. And then the character goes on to be like, but I don't think there is one to this. And I was like, yeah, like tricked me in the perfect way. So thanks, Stevie. But he fit in some like pretty good commentary. The whole idea of like teens for the slaughter was like, I thought pretty moving actually. So that was kind of a cool way to wrap it up. One other cool thing is when he announced his cover, I was like, this looks so much like House from the Wreckage, like in a cool way. Like I was like, oh, this like really is reminiscent of that cover that I really liked. And he's like, oh, it was Schism, who we also had on earlier in the podcast for Collage Macabre. So another really cool crossover. And we love a good cover.
Schism did the cover for Disappearance of Tom Nero by
that's right,
by TJ Price as well. So we all brought it back full circle at the end of the year. We were having these recalls.
Tied it all together.
Yeah. So what else has anyone been thinking and reading and doing about lately then?
Oh, well, you know, it's the holiday season, which means I'm spending money more than I should. But one thing I spent money on that I don't regret is I backed the Kickstarter for Haven Spec magazine. They put out speculative fiction, obviously, like monthly issues. I believe we have a ton of writers in our circle who have been published through them. We have a bunch of writer friends who have been published through them. TJ Price, who was on earlier this year, is an associate editor there, but they are trying to move from paying token rate to writers to paying them pro pay. So they have a ton of tiers of rewards and stuff. So I think I signed up to get like a year's worth subscription or whatever. But they have like perks, like you can get edited by famous people or Tuckerized, or I don't know, they have an enormous list. And Leon Pernacio is the editor. He's a real good guy. They do, I think every other month they limit their windows of publishing, or limit their windows of submitting to BIPOC and LGBTQ plus people only. So they're also like out there doing the good work. So if you have it in your heart, definitely go check out their Kickstarter. It's ending soon, so we would love to get them over the finish line.
Sounds fantastic. So I read a lot of self-published books. I can't talk about all of them. As I already mentioned, if you wanted to check out some of them, there was that article that I mentioned earlier that has some, but one that wasn't in the article that I actually read recently, it's very small, so Chelsea, you'll love it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's called The Poisoner's Last Ride by Kenzie Jennings. And this one, it's short, so it's kind of hard to tell the full story without it spoiling it. But it's basically about this poisoner who's also like an auditor, so it's like a legalized poisoning in a like a post-apocalyptic Mad Max kind of world. And she's on the run, and I can't give any more, but it's very neat. It's called a post-apocalyptic love story, so it feels to me kind of more like a love story to the post-apocalyptic genre.
Ooh, I love that.
And so I would definitely recommend checking it out. I didn't even know what it was about when I bought it. I bought it because it had a cute cover, and so I was like, "Meh, it's small, why not?" So I did get it. It's just a novella. So The Poisoner's Last Ride by Kenzie Jennings.
Cool. Thank you. That sounds up my alley as well. I'll put it on the TBR. Elton,
Yeah.
do you have anything to say?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm I'm a sleepy bunny. I've been working on my own stuff. I haven't had a chance to do a lot of reading outside of reading / for Lethe Press. I see everyone releasing books, particularly self-published authors releasing books. I've done self-publishing myself, and I'm in awe of people who can manage to do everything themselves in this way. I think it's such a talent, and I think you should all be like highly commended for the amount of work that goes into it. Fuck Judy Picoult. And yeah, that's all I have to say on that. We will be back after this short break, but we will be joined by self-published authors Noelle Ihli and Kat Silva. Back in a minute.
Waking up in a bath of ice, I'm a victim of an organized. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you already stole my heart. Yeah, you ripped it and tore it apart. You know it is true, you know this time you never.
And we're back. We're joined by Noelle and Kat. Noelle W. Ihli is a thriller suspense author. She lives in Idaho with her husband, 2 sons, and 2 cats. When she's not plotting her next thriller, she's scaring herself with true crime documentaries or going for a trail ride in the foothills with her trusty pepper spray. That's important.
Definitely important. And we are also joined by Kat Silva. Kat is a Maine horror author, a connoisseur of coffee, and a victim of cat shenanigans. Kat, I think we might be separated at birth, actually.
I think so too.
She's a 2-time Maine Literary Award finalist for speculative fiction and a member of the Horror Writers of Maine, the Horror Writers Association, and New England Horror Writers Association. Catherine is also editor-in-chief of Strange Wilds Press and Dark Taiga Creative Writing Consultants. A sequel to The Wild Dark entitled The Wild Fall is now available, and her latest novella, Lost Oblivion, came out in October 2023. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So we all have cats on this podcast today.
Yes.
Love it.
I feel like every
We're gonna-
author should have a cat. I mean, it's
Yes,
in the description. You need them.
Yeah, I think it's
Absolutely.
contractual.
it's part of the starter kit.
We are here. It's kind of multifaceted. We are doing this little panel because the fun, unique thing about both of you is that you are, in my definition, successful, self-published authors. Later, we'll get into the definition of what you see as, success in your own work, but that is kind of the theme here, is to learn from the experts on what makes self-publishing the right choice and what ways you can do, like things you can do to be successful with it.
Yeah. So I guess we can start by asking both of you. I'll start with Kat. Why did you decide to self-publish over any other options?
So when I first was thinking about publishing a book, it was back in 2010, which is kind of when self-publishing was still new and very not the same as it is now. Definitely in an infant stage. It was an interesting idea for a lot of people, to have their own ideas not be changed by editors, to be able to make 100% royalties on all their books, to just basically put themselves out there and do all the work. And that was kind of my thought originally. I was like, yeah, I like the idea of this book I wrote. I don't want anyone to change it. I want to be able to just say that I did this myself and start there. And of course, I had no idea what I was doing back then either. So I ended up going through this business that helps you self-publish your books. It was a local business. They help you, get everything up on Amazon. They format everything. They do covers for you. And then it's a cooperative too. So you are put together with other self-published authors. And pretty early on, I was like, yeah, this is great. I get to go to all these events. Maine has a lot of writers. Pretty much you throw a rock and you hit a writer here in Maine.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So being a part of a community was really important. And then soon after, I kind of realized that in order to progress in a self-publishing career, I had to be able to learn how to do all of these different things, sort of take on the multifaceted role of, doing your own covers, doing your own layout, doing all this stuff. And so I did. And the next book was a finalist for a Maine Literary Award. And that was what kind of like got me going at that point. It was like, all right, this is addictive. I can do this. And then for the next 13 years, that's what I've done. And you learn as you go, certainly. So it's only gotten better and better and better as the years have gone on.
It's awesome.
That's great. Congratulations on your award. Did I say that
Yeah,
weird?
thank you.
That word weird. Congratulations
award.
on your award. So it's 6:00 when we're filming this. So I'm
Which is
already
yeah.
Oh,
creeping up
so
on bedtime.
late.
Yeah,
So-
Brett is like, this is like midnight to him. It's insane.
So that's really neat. I know that Noelle, you had a slightly different story. You came from publishing in a couple of respects, right? And then went into being an author with the self-publishing. How did you make that decision?
Yeah, and actually that kept me from deciding to self-publish for a long time. I love Kat's answer. You were so intentional about this. I kind of backed into it sideways. I came from a background in publishing. I was an editor with a small press, and I, thought if I ever publish a book, I'll do it the traditional way, which was always like the quote unquote right way in my mind. But I queried my first novel for a while and got kind of discouraged, got tired of getting requests for a full or partial manuscript and then not hearing back for months. So hearing ultimately it's not quite a fit for our list. So I finally just said, fuck it. And I'm going to put it out there. So it was not very intentional. And there's a lot of mistakes that I made because of that. I've honed my process and now I do it intentionally. And I'm so glad that I did back into it. Because at this point, I feel like I am the best advocate for my books. I put in the work to learn my market. I have been able to surround myself with really smart people who can give me honest feedback and help me create some of the assets that I need that I don't want to do myself. Like I outsource my covers. I don't do my own covers. I hire editors who can give me some of the feedback I don't want to hear. So I did not do this intentionally, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm so glad this is where I ended up.
I think with both of your answers, there's like, I don't know, there's definitely a stigma out there about self-publishing, which is why we were really excited to have this conversation on our podcast. And I feel like some people think it's like the easy way out or something, but it's like even just hearing from both of you and, being close to my own experience and other writer friends, like you are like a massive project manager on top of being the artist. And it's so much work. And just hearing you two talk about all the skills involved is like very inspiring and motivating, I think.
Since you mentioned that It has been said that it's the easy way out. Not going to say anything. What other misconceptions do you think surround self-publishing that you want to stamp out? Noelle, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest one out there, I think, is that it's the easy way out. And in one respect, it is like anybody can do it. But it's easy in the same way that drawing like a picture or making an art print is easy. Like anybody can do it, but can you do it well enough that somebody wants to bring it into their house and spend time with it and cherish it? Like the big five presses won't let you put a stick figure out into the market for sale. And you can do that as a self-published author. You won't sell books that way, but you can. And that kind of muddies the water, I think, from authors who want to do it more professionally and to have the resources now more than ever to do it professionally.
As well as what Noelle was saying, a lot of people assume that self-published books are lower in quality, that, somebody was just eager to get it out there, so they did not do the necessary steps to make sure that it was a finished product before they put it on the market. And I think that as the years have gone on and as the industry has changed, self-publishing has certainly changed. The definition of self-publishing has changed along with it, and a lot more people have kind of realized all the steps that are involved with self-publishing, and everybody goes about it a different way for the most part. There are a lot of people who have been very successful in self-publishing just with online marketing. There are people who do a billion shows a year and are successful with it that way. And then there are still that small group of people who put it out there and assume that it's just going to fly off the shelves. And that is certainly where I started when I was jumping in. I just kind of assumed like, yeah, I have this sweet idea. It's going to get made into a movie. Everybody's going to love it. And nobody bought it because I didn't put the work in to make sure that people knew about it. And when you are in the industry for a long time, when you spend time with other people and learn from them, you get the skills to be able to market yourself and market your book and do what you need to do to get it out there. So I guess it's in stages still, unfortunately. Like there are still people who jump into self-publishing and they're beginners and they don't quite know what to do. And then your more experienced self-publishers have got this down. They've been doing it for years. They know what to do.
In my experience, people have been really eager to help and help a lot of times for free and like getting your feet under you if you're new. Has that been the case for either of you as well?
Yeah, I found people to be so kind and so generous and supportive in the reading and writing communities. I still remember, so Brett was one of the very first strangers who reached out and told me that they liked my book, and that meant so much to me. It was this like, wow, like somebody I don't know.
That's so cool.
Love it. And it was such a, like, it felt like such a kind thing. And, since then, bookstagrammers and TikTokers, they've, for somebody to pick up a book and spend 8 hours with it and then tell you how they liked it, even if the feedback isn't all glowing, that's just that kind of generosity just means the world. And there are so many kind, generous readers and writers.
I have been told since then that I'm not supposed to jump into people's direct messages without asking first. I'm not great with the internet, but yeah, it was the thicket. I remember when I read that. Your prose has always just kind of spoken to me. You write kind of gruesome things in a very beautiful way. And so, yeah, I was compelled. I had to tell you about it. So.
Well, I'm glad you did. I loved it.
So, Kat, you mentioned that the marketing side of it was a portion that you had to learn. what marketing tips for people that are maybe looking to self-publish, or realistically, I guess anybody can use these because it's all about marketing, even if you're going through a publisher.
I think one of the biggest things that people need to do is join a community, talk to other writers. Definitely becoming part of a group is important. What's really hard is, like I was saying before, yeah, you throw a rock and you hit a writer in Maine. Well, not everybody is going to be on the same wavelength as you. Not everybody is going to fit in with the same aesthetic that you're writing. So one of the best things that could have happened to me pretty early on was joining the New England Horror Writers group. And that was like finding my people at the time. You know, Maine is fraught with a lot of crime fiction and literary fiction, and not a lot of horror, as weird as that might sound. So finding a group that was very horror centric, a group that does lots of events, and being able to table with these people was very eye-opening. Seeing how they set up for shows, seeing how they sold their stuff was definitely the start of my career.
Oh, great.
And your table, so I got to hang with Kat at the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival this year. I mean, I think if anybody walked up to your table, they would have thought you had a publisher. Like, it was so professionally looking and you presented yourself so well. Again, this is just, you know, a stigma that, you know, the self-publishers like won't give it 100, but clearly you have learned a lot about marketing, because your setup looked amazing.
Well, thank you. And that takes time.
Yeah.
I think that is something that is indicative of a self-published author that will probably find success, is just that extra little bit of care, you know, the taking the time, like Noelle mentioned, to get a cover made for yourself and getting it edited. Those are important bits that, even though you're self-publishing, another eye is always a good thing on our work, because so that you landed on that one. What about
before
you?
Oh, I was gonna say,
go
just
ahead.
because it's off of Kat's answer before we switch to Noelle, you mentioned like finding communities very integral to your success. And what would you say to people who might be like more introverted or may not know where to find a community? Do you have any advice for those types of people?
Well, there's a lot of online communities too. If it's not your thing to get together with people in person, there are certainly communities online where you can find other horror writers, and chapters of the Horror Writers Association are a really good place to start. And then, you know, also just getting on Instagram, getting on TikTok, getting on Blue Sky, places where you can start to connect with people. I will also say that the graveyard that is Twitter now, back when it was a burgeoning community, that is definitely where I found most of my people. As recent as 2020, 2021, that is, I can't say enough good things about the people that I found there. So
That's awesome.
It's important.
Yeah.
Piggybacking off what Kat said, I love to hear how intentional and you know, what's the right word, buttoned up that display was, and just the knowledge that goes into knowing what it takes to create a display like that at a convention or at a signing. A big part of the reason that I've been able to learn the business side of publishing and marketing my own books has been the group 20 books to 50K. I think that is a absolutely phenomenal resource to someone who wants to dip their toes into the idea of self-publishing. It's primarily focused on the business side of self-publishing. So it talks about marketing, newsletters, Amazon ads, Facebook ads, and it was so eye-opening to me. I think I had in the back of my mind that really leaning into the marketing and like essentially the money-making side of publishing a book was somehow cheapening my work and my craft, but that's what allows me to reach new readers, and it allows me to do this full time. Whereas, you know, if I push my book out there timidly and hope that someone might read it with one eye closed, then I won't find very many people. But the ability to give myself visibility and advocate for my book the way a publisher would, because there is no publisher that's advocating for it, that mindset has really helped me kind of spread my wings, so to speak, into the world of marketing and not see it as a dirty task, but something that really just, you know, brings new readers to my door.
I really love that. The I get criticized a lot for overconfidence. And it's just that I feel as though, like you kind of said, you have to advocate for yourself, because if other people can't see that you have faith in yourself, why are they going to have faith in you? So
Yeah, and there's a lot of like, I feel like people are out there like the pure, well, I don't know, that's a stupid way to frame it, but people who are like very into the art side, they're like, well, my art should speak for itself, like I shouldn't have to push it. And I'm like, well, we live in an age where everybody's attention span is 2 seconds long, and we have 1,000 options. You open up your Kindle, you open up your Netflix, you open up Spotify, like it's so overwhelming. Like you need to convince them to pick up your stuff. So I love that. What is that? 20 bucks to 50K? Is that like a website or a book or a group? What is that?
It's a group. I just got back from their yearly conference in Vegas, and it's a
Why didn't we
week-long.
bring you on like 2 months ago and I could have come?
I know, it's a week-long like fire hydrant of a conference where, I mean, I went to, I think, 15 panels a day, just learning about everything to do with book publishing and marketing and craft too, you know, honing in on the right covers for your market, honing in on your subgenres, you know, making sure that your ads are targeted towards readers who like your books. And it's really phenomenal. So if you go to the Facebook group, you can join, and then there's just hours and days worth of free resources that
that's awesome.
you can check out in the files. And then it's also a really generous community of people sharing how they have found success in marketing in their niche.
I will absolutely be joining that group. Thank you.
yeah, I just did.
You're supposed to be focused.
Whoops.
I do laugh at like how much marketing becomes like part of the self-publishing job. Like sometimes my spouse will be like, what are you up to? And I'm like, I'm writing. And he's like, you're on Instagram. And I'm like, it's part of writing. Like,
TikTok, yes.
My content is part of this. Like, it's unfortunately very true. Go ahead, Brett. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Did I talk?
Oh, I thought I cut you off. Maybe I just, you know.
Well, I guess I'll ask another question then. So Kat, 13 years.
Yes.
Amazing time to focus into something. So this one is probably going to be a big one for you, especially since you already mentioned that your first book, you just kind of like, take it. And you're a lot more deliberate now. What do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned from that first book that you put out to the most recent one, which is The Wild Fall, correct?
Yeah, I think that back in the day, it was more about saying that I did something versus wanting a story to just have legs and go and be out there in the world and have people read it, because I felt this story was important. And yeah, when I joined that cooperative, I was kind of just under this idea that I wouldn't have to do as much, and I didn't have a lot of time, you know, working full time and all the other things that go along with that. Make it hard to devote time to your own stuff. And at that time, I didn't know how much I needed to be involved, so I didn't really try. And when I got to the third book in that series and I put it out and I had probably no one buy it, I kind of had this realization that was like, do I really want to be doing this anymore? What am I doing this for? And I spent some time really thinking about it and then came back with a whole new attitude about it. Rebranded, definitely changed my marketing scheme, had a marketing scheme, I guess is a better way to put it. Did more research, learned how to make better covers, found better editors, just put more into it, and kind of to a point where I will say this last book, I may have destroyed my mind a little bit with how much marketing I did, because it's several months later and I'm still kind of burnt out, where I was, just it's hard to try and do a lot of things and run a full business
Yeah.
at the same time,
And then be creative on top of that to
and
keep
be creative
that
on
part
top of that.
alive.
Strategize your posts for social media every day on 5 or 6 different platforms, contact people to podcast with, to do shows with, to I just
Not to mention, like, you did all of that coming back from like what could be like a devastating career ending blow for a lot of people. Like, to put a book out and not sell any, like a lot of people would be like, screw that, I'm done. And like, so for you to reframe and like really tap into what you were trying to achieve, I think is really admirable.
It took a few years. I mean, that last one I had put out in 2015, and I didn't put anything out again until 2018. So I had to really think about it, and I had to really take some time with it before I knew that I was ready to jump back in.
Do you want to same question to Noelle, or should we change it up, Brett?
Same question. Yeah. I want to know all of it. This is so interesting.
We'll keep you all for 3 hours.
I'm sorry, but I mean, because it's a shorter time frame, because it's been a few years, maybe, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I just put out The Thicket in 2021, so it's been a pretty short time frame for me. I'm still learning. I'm still finding my feet in some ways, but in other ways I feel more confident than ever that this is like the thing I want to keep doing forever. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned given that short time frame especially is how much is possible. When I very first started, I had like a teeny tiny idea of what I might be able to do with putting out a book on my own. And if an agent had approached me then and be like, hey, we're going to scoop up The Thicket, I would have lost my mind and been so excited. And at this point, I've turned down more than one offer of representation from agents from some very cool houses that I appreciate, but I am really enjoying doing this. I don't want to mess with a good thing. My books are reaching readers and I'm working full time doing what I love. So I full steam ahead, and I feel like it's kind of blown my mind in the best way. So just I would have looked back at old Noelle and said, just think about it a little bit harder about what maybe.
It's very impressive. 4 books in like 2.5 years and a collection. That's busy.
No, impressive. And
busy.
Kat, how many books have you self-published, Kat?
It's weird.
Like, it's gotta be a lot, because I could name
some of
least.
them are short stories too. So I think we're at 10, but only, God, I have to think about this. 5 of them are novels. 3 of them are novellas, And then the last two are short stories.
Well, hey, they all need a cover and they all need to be posted and they all need to be marketed. So
Yeah.
no need
Yep.
to caveat. So it's interesting, like talking about sales and talking about, you know, like, what do you want likes on social media, or like, do you want book talkers talking about it, or reviews on Goodreads? Like, how do you define success for your own work? And we'll start with Noelle this time.
Okay, so how do I
And you don't have to stay within that frame. You can,
Such a big question. It's a fabulous question. I would say that piggybacking on what we've talked about with those negative stereotypes about self-publishing, I would say that when my readers are surprised to learn that I'm self-published because my work doesn't fit any of those negative stereotypes of self-published work, that would be one benchmark for me. The other is when I hear a stranger tell me that they just bullied their friends and family members into reading a book because they were so excited. Like Brett's message to me was, it was just such a great feeling to hear that somebody loved something that I wrote and engaged with the story, something that came out of my brain and spent some time in their brain. So that's success for me. I mean, doing this full time is a benchmark. Obviously, that feels very big. I just let go of my last freelance client. I had been freelance writing for the last few years as I ramped this up. And that's where I've wanted to be since I got started with that first novel. So yeah, all of those things.
Cool.
Congratulations. Sorry. I wish we had like champagne to pop or something, but I was just here.
Some water here.
Cheers. Yeah. Yeah, when you said that you just need people to bully their friends and family, I was like, sounds exactly like Brett.
I do. I'm a pusher and I will push the book until you read it. And not Chelsea.
That's why you're a great podcaster, Brett.
I'm just a fangirl. I can't help it.
Kat, same to you. How do you define success for yourself?
I mean, very similar. It's all about the feedback that you get from your readers, and to have people say that they felt something, they were changed by what they read is really kind of insane. A lot of what I write is defined as grief horror or existential horror. So people who are dealing with grief who have read my stuff and then say, you know, this helped me deal with things that I've had a hard time dealing with. That always just gets me, because like I'm not necessarily writing it for that reason. But then someone says something like that and it's kind of chilling, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's always weird when you write something for you and then somebody else seems to get it. I think almost a little too much. Yeah. Like but that's happened, especially with this series. The Wild Oblivion series has really, like, people have really gotten it. People have really felt stuff with it. And now I'm hooked, and that's all I want to do is just write that kind of thing to try and resonate with people. So that's part of it. And then also the fact that if I can keep learning as I go, if I can keep challenging myself, if I can do more for the community and give back, that's I'll feel fulfilled anyway.
You found that magic sauce. That's awesome.
I know this is skipping ahead a little bit. We'll circle back. Hey, it's our show, right? But you mentioned that you consider it like grief, right? One of the things that I wanted to ask you, because your writing is very raw, but it also kind of focuses on strength. Do you consider yours like tragedies or grief, or is the goal more trying to show the power that it takes to overcome that?
I think it's Depends on the story, certainly, but I think it started as the first thing and it's become the second thing. So where this started out was just I had these feelings that I just needed to get out, and writing them was the best way to get it out. And then it became, how is this character going to overcome this grief? And then how is that grief going to deepen later on and become a new monster for them to beat?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the new one I'm working on too, it's very similar. It's like it's an ever-changing thing that haunts people, that never really goes away, but you can find a way to live with it, or to, you know, find goodness in it. So
Yeah.
it's an exploration anyway.
Well, I was just gonna say, if you like grief horror, JV Gox, I'm gonna say it's probably wrong.
Gotch.
I'm so bad with names. She has a new one coming out that is
Epiphany,
right? And it's supposed to be the saddest thing just ever. So
I have seen the cover everywhere.
yeah,
She
So
is a fantastic writer. I love her work as well. I was gonna say, Kat, have not finished yet The Wild Dark, but I'm only in book 1 of your whole series, but I really love how you tackle grief. Like, you tackle loss from a lot of different angles. It's not always death. Sometimes it's the loss or dissolving of a relationship. And then it's layered too. So, like, you know, new loss reminds people of old loss, and, you know, there's different feelings you associate with the different losses. But I don't know, I just find it very real. Like, no one is so one-dimensional that like a single event is ever going to happen to you and strike you in a singular way. So I'm finding it to be very relatable and very powerful. So good job.
well, thank you.
Kat, tell us about your most recent publication, which is The Wild Fall.
So there are actually 2 this year. The Wild Fall was the big one. That's the sequel to The Wild Dark. And it takes place 10 years in the future from when the last book ended. So it has a very dystopian feel to it versus the other one, which was kind of like the beginning of the apocalypse. And it's in a world where, for those of you who don't know, a purgatory forest is taking over the world. Ghosts have kind of come back to haunt most of the people, and our main character is haunted by the ghost of her dead partner. She is an ex-cop, and is trying to survive while dealing with his ghost and the memory of what happened when he died. So 10 years in the future, I don't want to spoil anything from book 1, but it does show our character in a new situation with new people, tackling new kinds of grief and dealing with new enemies and old enemies. And this one definitely has a more fantasy feel to it, a more like surreal horror fantasy feel, which I really enjoyed writing, because it's just kind of taking it out of our world, a more familiar world, and putting it into more of a nightmarish place. And a lot of people have asked if there's going to be a 3rd book. Intentionally, I was hoping this was going to be the last one, but now that I am getting pressure, I don't know. I might write another one in the future. It's not on the docket for anything soon. And then the other book that came out in October is the sequel to Hallowed Oblivion, which was the prequel to The Wild Dark, just to confuse everybody.
I bookmarked the tweet that you made that made the list of the order to read it.
Yeah. Yes, there is.
I was like, I'm saving this so I can read in the right order.
There is it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like crazy murder board that shows suggested reading orders for all the books. So and this was one that I felt I needed to write because I had a lot of people who wanted more from Hallowed Oblivion. Like they loved the conciseness of the story, but they wanted more from the characters. And I wasn't done writing them. I did lose a very good friend this year, and so who reminded me a lot of one of the characters in that book, and I wanted to do something in his memory. So I did write that as kind of like a this is for you, and also kind of as a saying goodbye to these characters for a time anyway. So it was pretty emotional. And I really hope that people find and read that one.
Yeah. I'm really sorry to hear about your friend. What a nice tribute though. And hopefully it was helpful for you to write that.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really awesome. He was a writer also. He actually wrote nonfiction stuff for Field and Stream. So avid fly fisherman, just really cool guy.
And what's the title of the book that you're talking about?
Lost Oblivion is
Thank
the latest.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's like not easy to share either. So thank you.
It's been a couple podcasts of sharing, so it's getting easier.
I guess, do you want to spend a couple minutes talking about how you've created this universe that's in the Wild Oblivion series?
Sure. So the initial idea actually came from a couple places. There is this really great indie horror game called Limbo that came out way back in, I think, 2010 or maybe a little later than that, but it's a very minimalistic side-scrolling game in black and white, and it's all about this little boy who's trying to make his way through these environments to get to his sister. And the minimalism and the idea that Limbo is a giant forest has stuck with me, and I really wanted to play with the idea of what happens to a person when, you know, this giant limbo forest starts taking over the world. What happens with our concepts of what happens after death? What if it's not as straightforward as we think it is? Trying to turn it on its head, this very omnipresent idea of heaven and hell. And it got more and more complicated as I wrote the series. It's almost become a little more cosmic horror now, coming into the later books. And I really enjoyed that because I have never really, I'm gonna say, vibed with the idea of you know, a strict Judeo-Christian ideology. So I just like having fun with it.
Nice. And when I first started your book, and it's funny you said that Maine has a ton of crime writers, because I was like, oh, what a cool true crime story this is. And I think even at the festival, I had only been like a couple chapters in, and I like told my friend Ryan, I was like, you're gonna love this. It's like true crimey, it's really good. And then it totally took a turn into the supernatural and the horror, and it's been a really fun ride. So it's funny that, and now it's turning cosmic, so that'll be really fun.
Yeah, I've always liked watching cop shows too, so it just made sense for me to have our main character be a cop. And honestly, the two main characters are inspired by two characters from the TV show Fringe, which used to be on, which I still think is one of the best TV shows ever created. So their dynamic, you know, the cop, the detective dynamic, really spoke to me.
And you're among friends. True crime junkies here.
Yeah. So, Noelle, I don't know which one you're going to want to talk about, but because you had the two that popped up right at the same time, I did get to finish up Twisted Tales recently, and it was such a cute little thing. But which is the newest one that you wanted to discuss?
Probably Room for Rent.
I figured.
Twisted Tales has been kind of a fun little side project that it's like the books that you read as a kid had a baby with the horror genre. That's Twisted Tales, and it's illustrated. It's a fun collection of stories. But that's a little bit different subgenre than my typical thriller. So so my latest adult thriller is called Room for Rent. It's about a college senior at Boise State. Her name's Naya, and she's in her final semester. She's had a pretty rough upbringing, grew up in a really high control fundamentalist group. She's kind of hanging on by a thread financially, and she just rented the cheapest house she could find off campus. And it turns out her roommate is pretty awful, and so is the house. And then things just get worse from there. So there's a few spoilers. I don't know how much more I can say without spoilers on that, but yeah, things get pretty bad. It's I've had a couple of people tell me they feel like it's like the show Fear Thy Roommate had a novel birthed a novel. So yes, it's gross and fun, and yeah. I'm trying not to spoil anything. I keep trying to dance around some of the reveals.
It's a hard one not to spoil because it has a very small cast of characters. So but it is very intense. A lot of your work, it's very slow burn, emotional, and then it's like, oh, then fucking nuts. So what it is what it is. I always think back to it.
There's your blurb right there. You don't even worry about
add that onto
spoilers.
Amazon. Absolutely.
There was a scene in Ask for Andrea, which I think that one's well enough known now that the premise is of three women that have already they've been murdered, and they're kind of following the man that murdered them. He was a serial killer, and I think I even mentioned this, that I was kind of concerned, how do you keep the fear in that, because they're already dead. She did.
Yeah.
So it hit a scene in the woods where I had to put it down for a couple of minutes because I was shook. But sorry, I'm not fangirling right now. I'm professional. So what genres do you think that your work falls into?
I mean, it definitely straddles a couple, but I think thriller suspense is what I usually come back to. There's a lot of technically some of it is horror, but I have learned that my primary audience identifies as thriller readers, and sometimes horror is a thought-stopping process for thriller readers. So not vice versa. A lot of self-proclaimed horror authors and readers like thrillers, but a lot of thriller readers are a little nervous about horror. It has it's almost like the self-publishing thing. It's got all these stigmas that put it in this really narrow little box. So
I could yell about that and yell and excitedly about that topic for so long, because so many people are like, oh, I don't read horror, and I'm like, but you watch true crime, but you like thrillers. And the scariest thing I've ever read was nonfiction. So tell me,
make it make sense.
Tell me exactly where you land.
But I mean, you like what you like. I am one of the horror the readers that also really love thriller, but I have to take them in small doses because they stress me the fuck out. They do.
I love them.
It's a lot for me. So Noelle, I guess I'll just keep talking. Sorry, Chelsea. But the similar to what I asked of Kat, yours, I think everything that I've read from you does fit this pretty well, where it typically has a main POV character, female always, that is the epitome of just extreme strength, and it shows the resolve of human nature. But then also you focus a lot on the extreme brutality of human nature, and sometimes even from both points of view. You'll be in the head of both the hero and the villain. How do you pull that out? How do you get yourself into those conflicting headspaces?
Yeah, I love that question. And that's making me think a little bit. So almost everything scares me. I'll put it that way. So I write from a place of like extreme anxiety when I sit down to write a book or plot a new book. Sometimes the world feels like a pretty awful place. And I've learned that what helps me manage that anxiety is looking at some of the everyday people who come toe to toe with really horrifying situations and rise to the occasion. So that's who I look to grapple with my own anxiety. And that tends to play out in my books it helps me to kind of be the one at the wheel and throwing somebody into this horrible situation and then kind of helping them claw their way out. I tend to discovery write a lot, so I often don't know how somebody's going to get out of a situation, and I'll have to sit with it for a while. There's a scene in Run on Red, which was the book I released last year, where the main characters are in like this awful crawl space, and I didn't know how they were going to get out. So I just sat for a few days. Like I was really stressed out about it. It's like, we're still in the crawl space. We're still in the crawl space.
Were you having like nightmares about it? You're like, I gotta figure this out.
I'm thinking about it a lot. I'm really afraid of spiders, and there were a lot of spiders down there. So I think I just write from my own anxiety and also from the thing that helps me grapple with my anxiety, which is everyday people figuring things out in horrible situations.
The true crime root connection right there.
Exactly.
I can recognize it in one of my own.
Yes.
So, Kat, again, which of your books would you say is your favorite, and why is it your favorite? This is a hard one. It's like asking for your favorite child, which
I know, especially in a series, it's like you have the same people. Oh, yeah, that's hard.
So it's actually not in that series though, which is, I know, scandalous.
I'm just kidding.
But my second book that I wrote, I had the most fun writing, like ever. I would call that the height of my career, because I was juggling a blog that I was writing like 3 blog posts a week, writing a novel, working full time, and I was loving it. And I loved writing this book because it was this like globe-trotting vampire conspiracy theory political thing. And
what is the name of this?
It's called Equitas, because all the names in that series have Latin names.
That sounds
in
awesome.
Hindsight, might not have been the smartest choice because no one can say it. But
well, I was going to ask you to spell it.
Yeah, it's weird. We'll
put it in the show notes.
Aequitas. But yeah, I loved writing that one. And there has been a sense of, I think, like with everything that I've written recently, I tend to be really good at giving myself almost impossible goals. And like with Lost Oblivion, I was like, yeah, this is going to come out on October 12th because that's when Hallowed Oblivion came out. And I'm like, oh, good. You have 4 giant shows to do in between your announcement time and then. And you have another book releasing with like a million different podcasts and shows to do in between. And you're going to try and release this book. And I still did, but at the detriment of losing sleep, losing sanity, mental health totally cascading into a void. And so I have these negative memories attached to these projects because of that. So like finding real joy in my past with working on something that I didn't feel like I had restrictions and endless ridiculous goals to meet. I do go back to that one a lot. And I did just re-release it last year, with new covers and everything too. So it has been updated, but it's also the sequel to a book. So not that many people buy it because everybody's always like, yeah, I'm going to try this series out. I'm going to buy book 1. And then that's that. So
you got to make another one of those diagrams and be like, well, I wrote this one first. So.
Yeah,
Buying
that's
and
a
reading
weird
are
one
different
too.
things.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're different hobbies.
Too.
They are different hobbies. Stand by that. I excel in buying books. Reading books, I'm a lot slower at. I think like you bring up such an interesting point, which is like when you're self-publishing and like setting your own deadlines, which like often is kind of arbitrary, and then you are sticking to them, and you can really stress yourself out. But so any self-published author that sticks to it, power to you. Good for you.
What about you, Noelle?
Yeah, Noelle, what is your favorite of your books?
That is a hard question. It is like the favorite child, but like you kind of do have a secret favorite. So not really. If my
Next,
children...
we're asking
if
her
your kids are
her
listening,
favorite
she was
kid
kidding.
Mom's kidding. I would probably say it's Ask for Andrea. It's the one that got me most in my feelings while I was writing it, just trying to imagine like what the damn afterlife is like. I'm an atheist. I don't really ascribe to any, like, maybe agnostic is a better word, but I was a challenge. I knew I needed to pull in something because there's ghosts in my book. And so I had to spend a lot of time just like thinking about what I would want. And as I was writing it, it got me all teary as I was thinking about these like 3 ghost women that I was writing about. And that's been really fun to have writers, not writers, but readers message and have them tell me the same thing while they were reading. That, if somebody who recently lost her husband just sent me a message and said that that was what she was going to think about, was that's how the afterlife was that someday she'd just be able to go through all of her memories with him again. And so I think it's just something that connected with me pretty hard emotionally. And I just kind of got to love all those 3 ghosts quite a lot.
What a interesting thing that the 2 of you had in common that we didn't even plan for. So
Yep.
That's pretty amazing. That's kind of a good segue into a question that popped in my head as you were talking. So I'm sorry I didn't send this to you ahead of time, but what is the best way for your readers to support you? Whether it's like where to buy, where to review, when to buy, how can you help us help you as self-published authors?
That's a great question. I mean, if you're asking that question, you're probably already doing it. I mean, reviews mean the world. Like I genuinely do, and some authors don't, but I genuinely do read every single one because each one either tells me something that I want to do more of in the future, or something that I can learn from, or just kind of gives me the warm fuzzy that they spent time with something I made and connected with it. So yeah, reviews are huge. And then just, I think second guessing some of those stereotypes we talked about with self-published versus traditional, let the reviews speak for themselves and find books that you love, and then, bully your friends and family members into reading them, I guess.
Do you have a preferred platform that people review on? Do you get more ROI from any of them?
Amazon and Goodreads are always 2 of the biggest. That just generally tends to be the place where most of the readers are and where most of the book sales take place. But wherever you like to hang out as a reader, if you buy your books on Kobo or if you are an Audible person, then that'll that's incredible. Anybody who wants to leave a review or get a book, like anywhere they do that is incredible.
Awesome. And then Kat, same question to you. What is the best way for your readers to support you?
I mean, it's very much the same. If
Everybody
you,
write reviews.
yeah,
Let's go.
if you liked something that I wrote, I'd love to see a review or a rating, you know, whatever you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be in depth. It can be as simple as I liked it or I didn't like it. And no matter what you share, your review is important. And it just helps people see our stuff in the sea of books that are out there. And then I guess the other thing I will add is, no matter if you are reading on ebook, if you are reading on paperback, if you are reading the audiobook, I'd love to see more reviews for the audiobook versions of a couple things, just because I know that the narrators did such an incredible job.
Your narrator is very good. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Like, she's insanely good. And she's currently doing the sequel right now. And she couldn't, she's also an actress, so she was part of the whole SAG-AFTRA strike and couldn't do any work during that whole thing. So,
ooh, that's tough. I didn't even think of that crossover.
It's been a really rough few months. And a lot of the narrators that authors get to do their projects are just super passionate about it, and they love what they do. And I think audiobooks are one of those things that don't get as many reviews generally, or as many like podcast opportunities or online blog review options as other formats do. So yeah, that's my one plea, I guess, would be give the audiobooks a try.
I love audiobooks. I love when self-published and indie horror people are on audio, because as my fellow hosts will know, I'm a slow reader. So I'm like, yes, play in my ear while I'm doing laundry. Thank you. But I love it. That's good. Good to know.
I listened to one book. I don't listen to a lot of audio. I do most of my reading like the old fashioned way, but I listened to one. It was a story. I think it was maybe by Jennifer McMahon, and I was helping my husband at his job because he would sometimes drag me in to help with things when he was understaffed, and I was like washing a wall or something like that. And I was listening to it not on headphones, and it like a sex scene popped up. And it was like blaring the sex scene. And I've never listened to another audiobook because it just completely scarred me, because there were other people there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh God, this guy's listening to porn.
Now you're scarred forever.
Yeah, no more.
I mean, headphones would solve the issue.
Yep.
Or Chelsea, you could stop trying to be my boss.
I'm gonna bully you the way you bully your friends.
So Noelle, I do want to ask, because you mentioned Ask for Andrea, and that one's kind of the most, I guess they're all speculative. Speculative is kind of like a term. What does it really mean? Do you have any plans to write anything to that side of speculative again, to the more supernatural? That's a better word.
Yeah. I actually do. It's the most challenging book that I've written so far, and I'm really, really excited about it. It's focused on the Mountain Meadows Massacre. A lot of people haven't heard about it, but it took place on 9/11, and it was one of the deadliest massacres in U.S. history until the 9/11 that we all are more familiar with. It was 120 immigrants from Arkansas, mostly women and children, who were killed by religious zealots in southern Utah. So there were 17 kids who survived, and one of them, who blocked out the memory of the attack, is one of my protagonists. So the book will have multiple POVs, including her mom, who didn't survive the attack. And there are some supernatural elements in there as she is trying to grapple with these nightmares and memories of things that she's blocked out. So I'm really excited about this book. I think it's going to hit on some of the things that got me right in the feels with Ask for Andrea.
Yeah, I've never heard of that massacre, embarrassingly, but you know.
I hadn't, but I think you mentioned this to me like
Yep.
a year ago, maybe that's what made me look it up. And oof, I can't wait for that one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like reading through the questions, like what is the stuff I really gotta know? Kat, sorry, I'm swooping. How expansive do you plan to make the encroaching forest universe?
So touching back on that, currently there are God, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 stories / books in that series right now. Like I was saying before, I am feeling the pressure of writing a 3rd book, but I do not have plans to write it right now. I did have another idea for a sequel to Dan and Andy's Karaoke Holiday, which is the Christmas story in this series.
Ooh.
But I don't have that ready at the moment. I think really the big thing is that I need to take a break from it because I've been going pretty hard on this series for the last 2 years. And I will be, I probably will be writing some more in it later on, but I don't have anything concrete planned at the moment.
Okay.
I love that some or all of it is based in the White Mountain National Forest. I personally spend a lot of time there. And it's super ripe for horror, just like it's like a brutal landscape. It's cold. For listeners who aren't familiar, like Mount Washington in the White Mountains has some of the most dangerous weather in the entire world. And it's like a little known fact, but and weather's not even a huge factor in the stuff that I've read, but I don't know. I just love that it's set there. And I don't know if you wanted to take any time to like talk about how that inspired you at all.
Yeah, I actually used to go there a lot as a kid. My distant relatives have a house up there in Jackson, and so we would go up there occasionally and spend time up there. And then we would also vacation up there at one of the hotels every year. So I have a lot of good memories of the White Mountains. I do think that it's just a gorgeous landscape. Part of the Appalachian Trail goes through there. There's a lot of opportunities to play with horror in the White Mountains. And it's just a beautiful place to hike and, go leaf peeping or spend a weekend. So I'm lucky that I live nearby and had a chance to spend time there.
Same.
And I will
Official
probably write
endorsement.
more. Yeah, I'll probably write more in the White Mountains.
Yeah, I would love to someday as well. We'll see. We'll see if I get there.
Alrighty. So one of the things as we wind down here, we love to ask people that come on is to recommend other authors. And since we're focusing on self-published work, I would be I don't even know the words, so I'm going to skip this. I lost it, but I do. I want to know.
It's only fitting that we ask who your favorite self-published.
Who are your favorite ones? Who do you go to for self-published work?
Yeah, I have 3 that they're auto-buy authors for me. I love pretty much anything that they write, and they're all self-published. So Kirsten Modglin would be one of the first. She's the queen of very twisty, fast-paced thrillers. and she's extremely prolific. So her latest book, Do Not Open, was incredible. It's like, I don't know if you watched The Patient with Steve Carell, the Hulu.
I haven't, but I've heard it's very good.
Incredible. So it's like that combined with Misery, Stephen King. So an obsessed fan decides to get real close to an author. And anyway, Kirsten is incredible. So Kirsten Modglin, highly recommend. And then Faith Gardner, she writes near future, thriller, horror, straddles that line. But she's just absolutely talented. Her writing is so lyrical and her plot lines are so inventive. Her book Amen Maxine is one of my favorites. It's about like a human companion bot that makes predictions about, the weather and about when the best time to go shopping will be, almost like a Siri, but then she starts making very personal recommendations to the protagonist that start coming true. So she's it's an incredible,
it sounds really fun.
very fun. And then Steph Nelson, she writes horror. She writes a lot of survival horror. Her book Sawtooth takes place in the Idaho wilderness. Was absolutely incredible. It comes out this month. And then her debut, The Vein, takes place in an abandoned silver mine in the Idaho mountains. So she's a fellow Idaho girl, and her writing is just beautiful and horrific. And so she's traditional, but she's also self-published as well. So Steph Nelson is another recommendation to follow.
I got to meet her at StokerCon. We had a breakfast together and she was so lovely. So hi, Steph.
Sawtooth is actually in my TBR.
Oh, amazing. You'll love it, I think.
I think Chelsea would love it too if she ever
I know. Oh my God. I'm on this like very accidental survival or outdoorsy, because Cats is not quite survival horror, but it is outdoors in the woods. I'm on this like very weird kick by accident where like most
it's also
of
what you write. So take a hint.
It's not
Finish
all
your
what I
novella.
write. My unwritten novella is gonna be survival. Ay. Don't hold me accountable on this podcast, Brett.
I said, I'm sorry.
I
I
know.
have to apologize to both of you. I said I'm going to bring it up every episode. So
I've gotten at least 1,000 words out since we last spoke.
a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah, we don't need to worry about it. It'll come. Kat,
That made me.
you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check out Steph. I had my eyes on it, but that mine one that sounds really good to me. So
Fantastic.
I've seen very good things about it. All right, Kat, how about you? What are your favorite self-pubbed, your recommendations?
So I have a few, I think they're all women actually.
Good, we love that.
So Antonia Rachel Ward, who is also the owner of Ghost Orchid Press, put out a novel this past year called Dreamscape. So it's her first self-published novel. And it's a very like cyberpunky horror novel. Very cool, very unique. Definitely worth a look.
Awesome.
I also think she's definitely a hybrid author, because now most of her stuff is being published through some bigger venues, but she did start as a self-pub author, and that's Gemma Amor. So her stuff is amazing. Definitely another person to read.
Another very generous horror
extremely
member as well.
Yeah. And then I actually had some trouble coming up with a third one. But there is another main horror author who does do self-publish, who lives very close to me. And she also writes woodsy horror, and that is Samantha Eaton. And she's had a couple books come out this year also, The Insatiable Hunger of Trees and Roots of, it's either Roots in Your Bones or Roots of Your Bones. But she's also worth a look.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Just add them to my list. I'll definitely buy them. I'll read them in the next 10 years, maybe. So high.
I have a bad habit of buying the stuff that we're talking about on Amazon as we talk. So you guys have to talk to my husband about that one because I didn't cause this. You did.
It's all your fault.
So
no, thank you for the recommendations. Love that always.
So one other thing is sometimes we do this in the beginning, sometimes we do it in the end, the whimsy of podcasting. But where can we find you? Kat, do you want to start?
Sure. You can find me pretty much everywhere. I am omnipresent. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, very occasionally. And of course, I'm still lingering on X until utter devastation happens. And I do have a Substack as well. And my main home base is at catherinesilvaauthor.com.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Keep in touch with all of your series there. And then Noelle, how about you?
I am not omnipresent. I am pretty much on Instagram at Noelle Ihli Author, or you can find me on Facebook at on the Noelle Ihli Author page. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Or you can, I have a website, dynamitebookspublishing.com, but that's not updated as regularly as it should be. So Instagram or Facebook.
We would know nothing about not updating your website regularly.
No, totally. I update my website all the time. Yeah, that's the bane of my existence. And then the bill hits and I'm like, God damn, I'm paying for this website. I don't even.
That actually just happened today. Jason was doing something and he's like, what's Create Space? Or what is it? Is that what it's called?
Squarespace.
Squarespace.
You don't even know what it's called.
Squarespace. And I was like, oh, that's my website. He's like, are people actually visiting it? I'm like, hey, come on, mind your business.
Oh my
You have to
God.
blast
I at
me out
least
in
get
front of
like,
everybody like
I
this.
get like a couple emails that come through the form, so it makes it feel worth it.
I've gotten some spam, yeah.
Nice.
All righty. So this has been the Cutthroat Queens, and you are welcome. I miss Ellen. Why isn't he here to do this anymore?
Waking up in a bath of ice, I'm a victim of an organized. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you already stole my